says that he saw until what time? Until Adam, the Ancient of Days, did sit. So now we can connect Daniel with John, and they're seeing the same picture and giving us different pieces. So we jump to a heavenly Adam on Diamond. Now think about that in terms of our time frame here. We've got this event that happens in about 1847, and you're jumping to what? Like 200 years in the future. I don't know what to do with that. Why doesn't John fill in the gaps here? Why does he jump from 1847 to 200 years into the future? Well, he doesn't. He does and he doesn't. Remember what he says? He says, this is a wonder in heaven. Joseph will retranslate that to say, sorry, it's the first one. There appeared a sign in heaven in the likeness of things on earth. So what we're learning is this is a parable of sorts. And so John's going to pick up the parable later on. He's going to say, to the what? The church. We're given 2 wings of a great eagle. Now here's where it gets just awesome. Joseph in that Council of 50, in that book, will write a letter to Congress asking permission for the church to go west. And Congress, symbolized by what? An eagle will give permission to the church to go and colonize all of Arizona, Utah, and Idaho before they even leave, just as John predicts. So Brigham Young will bring the saints into Utah and say what?
This is the way.
Just like John told him to say. You see what Joseph and Brigham are doing? They're just following a playbook, right?
I thought they just got lucky.
Yeah, they just got lucky. But you can't just follow a playbook. It's impossible. You know this. You're human. You've experienced life, and you've tried to live your life as best you can, and how's that going for you? Right? Probably a little bit like mine. It sucks at times, it's great at times, and it's mediocre at times. And yet these guys are doing this perfectly. Now, what's going to happen to the church in Utah? That term right there is a moed. A moed, which is a jubilee cycle, which is 50 years. A moedim, 2 jubilees, 100, and a half a jubilee, which is 25. That's 175 years. 1847 plus 175 is 2022. What should happen in 2022 if this is correct? The earth will no longer help the woman, and the flood that is prophesied of all over the scriptures, Isaiah, Doctrine and Covenants, Jeremiah, Deuteronomy, will begin to overtake the church. What's the flood? The overflowing scourge, the desolating sickness, the consumption decree. These things are all over the place. So, what is the church? Let's break it down very practically. The church is a 501c3 organization organized under the IRS laws, under the Federal Code of the United States Constitution. It is a corporation organized in the state of Utah, and it is, most importantly, keys. How many of those matter to the Lord?
What was the third one?
Keys.
Keys.
If you got to get rid of 2 of those, which ones are you going to get rid of?
Everything but the keys.
Does the Lord care about 501c3s and corporations in heaven? Okay, so what if we're left with only keys? What's going to happen to the church if everything else is peeled away?
Stand.
And all we have, how many people can handle faith in an organization of God that only has keys? No property, no beautiful buildings, no fancy clothes, no awesome communications, right? No cars for missionaries, no money for missionaries, just keys, that's all. Now let's keep that in your head, we'll come back to that. So what would we expect to see in 2022? The flood begins to overtake the church. Now who sends out the flood? The dragon. Who accompanies the dragon in the last days? 4 entities. The 4 beasts. The lion, force. Is that what you say, force?
I thought it was the horseman.
Okay, no, that is
That's another bad.
I don't understand them at all, which is why I never talk about them. I wish I did. I don't.
The lion, the bear.
It's the four beasts in Revelation 13. The lion, the bear, the leopard, and the eagle. Okay, so when we think about this thing sent out, I would argue, personally, that what you should expect to see in 2022 is attacks on the church by government, because the government is the beasts identified in Revelation and Daniel. In 2022, Canada and Australia began to audit the church relative to tithing expenditures because those two countries claimed the right to investigate how the church spent the money of the Canadian and Australian people. In 2022, the SEC of the United States government, the Securities Exchange Commission, fined the Church of Jesus Christ $5 million for violations of the 1934 Securities Exchange Act. Most people look at that and they're like, well, we can pay that, but there's a problem with that. If you study the 1934 Securities Exchange Act, there are two paths that the government can pursue for violations of the law. One is a fine, and the other is, guess what? Close. This follows prosecution for criminal activity. What does that mean? If I can prosecute you for criminal activity, what have you done?
Broken law.
You've committed a crime. But I say to you, don't worry, I'll let you go this time. All you have to do is pay me money. What do we call that? It's called extortion. Okay, so here comes the United States government, says to the church, you have broken the law. We're not going to prosecute you this time. Who do you think they prosecute?
Say that Utah?
Who's the agent?
Wilson.
That's right.
Who?
Now think about that's the profound realization, right? We now live in a day where the government can prosecute the Lord's prophet for spending our money the way we want. Does that make sense to you? So the government comes in and says, I don't like the way you did things. You weren't telling me what you were doing. My response would be, I don't have to. I answer to the Lord. You are nothing compared to him. And if the church said that, I'd be like, yeah, that was awesome. But the church doesn't do that. And instead, the church is subject, Article of Faith number 12, we believe in being subject to. And the church says, okay, here you go. What do you think the Lord is thinking at that moment? How long do you think the Lord is going to let us do that to his church? Because it's us, right? It's not this amorphous entity. We, the people, are the government. We are the ones levying the fine. We are the ones enforcing the law. And so here we are, where now the government itself has begun to persecute the church. And for the first time since maybe the early 1900s, late 1800s, when we weren't even officially a state yet, now we are. Now our own government is persecuting our church. Just as you would predict from Revelation chapter 12. Now, what's interesting next is that John doesn't immediately go into our day. He jumps forward in time again. So, I joke about this all the time. My wife hates the next part of this presentation. She always says to me, don't do it. It's so boring. So I'm going to try to skip it. But in doing so, I need to give you a little hint as to where to go, okay? Remember how the woman gets to the west with the help of this eagle. So, if you want to follow that story, you go to Ezekiel 17, where you'll pick up right where John leaves off. And you got to look at this narrative as how this prophet will take you on a very specific year or decade by decade journey. And then all of a sudden that same prophet will stop and do a huge leap in time, and then another prophet will pick up precisely where the other one left off. So watch how Ezekiel picks up right where John leaves off, okay? Who's the parable to? The house of Israel. Look at who's involved in this. The same eagle. Anybody ever studied D&C 97? where the Lord talks about the Constitution of the United States. Says it is approved of him and commands us to befriend it. Is that 100 or 97? And he says anything more or less, what? Cometh of evil. So who's the one that helps liberate the people? According to Moses, it's going to be the Lord. So if the Lord has liberated this nation, and this nation turns away from the Lord, do you think it will lose the coat of many colors, the diverse colors? This indicates that the posterity of Joseph is there. It's a place of Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay, now this eagle is going to take the highest branch. Who's the highest branch? Look at 2 Nephi 3.
Supreme Court?
Close. This is the Lord's branch.
Oh.
But that's a good guess.
Core of the 12.
Close. Look at this. Joseph in Egypt saw our day, that the Lord God would raise up a righteous branch, not the Messiah, but a branch to be broken off. His name would be called after me. Joseph. Okay, go back to Ezekiel. Who's the highest branch? Joseph. Joseph Smith. Okay, now, does Joseph Smith have anything to do with the latter-day great eagle? Or a nation associated with an eagle? He crops off the top and carries, let's just put Joseph in there, okay? I want you to prove it through the hypothesis, right? The hypothesis, this is talking about Joseph Smith. Is Joseph Smith cropped off and carried into a land of traffic and set in a city of merchants? In Ezekiel 17, the Hebrew word for traffic is Canaan, or Canaan. Where's the original land of Canaan? Over in Israel, right? Okay, look at this. Who's the son of Adam? Seth. Son of Seth is Enos. Enos is driven out of the land. Okay? So where's Adam? Adam starts in the Garden of Eden. Adam is driven out to what land?
Desolate.
Adam on Dion. Where's that?
Missouri.
Okay? Enos is driven out of there. So if Enos is driven out of Missouri, what's the land around Missouri? Apparently it's the original Canaan, if you follow Joseph's revelations in Pearl of Great Price. Okay, and Enos calls the land around Adam on Diamond Canaan after his son. Okay, where's Joseph driven? Into Canaan. And he's set in a city of merchants. The word is Rokalim in Hebrew, which means a city of traders, or a city of merchants. What is a merchant? There's the Hebrew word today. You punch in Rokalim today in Google Translate, and that's what you get.
Commerce.
Joseph was driven into a place called Commerce.
Nothing.
Okay, now look at that. Joseph goes to a place called Commerce, Illinois, and changes the name to Nauvoo. Ezekiel then says he takes the seed of the land, okay, after Canaan and Commerce, or Nauvoo. Now we need to expect to see the seed planted in a fruitful field by great waters. Do we see the saints go anywhere by great waters after Nauvoo? The Lord calls them at that point a willow tree. Now this is the part I gotta stop. It's like, it actually goes into how Utah becomes a state. And it's amazing. It's so precise and so on point. But it's so boring. So, I'm not gonna do it. But here's the point you gotta see next. Look at who shows up in Ezekiel 17, another eagle. Okay, anybody ever studied the second Esdras Ezra's eagle. Okay, anybody never heard of that?
Oh, no.
It's important if you haven't that you admit it. I know it's
Yeah.
okay. Okay, have you ever talked with another Christian person who doesn't like Mormons? And they're like, you're not really Christian. And one of your main problems is you added to the Bible. You heard this one? In the book of Revelation, it says, nobody should add or take away from this book, right? Next time somebody says that to you, ask them what they think then about 2nd Esdras. And you know what they'll do? What are you talking about? Because, and why would that matter? Well, if you go back to the 1800s and you take a Bible from the 1820s, there's a bunch of books in there that are gone now. And it was a bunch of Christians who got together, contrary to the supposed admonition of John the Revelator in Revelation, and they literally took entire books out of the Bible in the 1800s. And they're gone. So where did they go? Why doesn't your Bible have those books in it anymore? Because the Christians voted them out.
Which Christians?
So it was the Church of England and a bunch of Lutherans and activist Christians in America. And they decided that at that point in time, every Bible would now remove what used to be called the interlinear, which we call today the Apocrypha. And the Apocrypha prior to the 1500s wasn't even an interlinear. A bunch of Christians, and it's the Catholic Church actually in the 1500s, decided to take the interlinear and make it the interlinear, and they put it between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Prior to that, guess where it was? It was just in the Bible, and it was called the Bible.
I was actually talking to a Catholic buddy the other day, and they have the Apocrypha except for Esdras.
Yeah.
At least he did in his Bible. And I was like, why would they remove just that book out of all the Apocrypha?
Because it proves that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Wasn't the Apocrypha in the books that the pioneers came
Yes.
across the plains? And
Yeah.
how come it ended up out?
Yeah.
So you basically have the church making a political concession, because the King James Version at this point in time has been altered by all other Christian denominations. So as a church, I think we had to make a decision. Do we confront them? We've already got the Golden Bible, right? Do we now defy them and keep that in? And I think the church just made a political decision to not do it. For the same reason we didn't really push forward on the Joseph Smith translation. One, because the intellectual property was owned by the Reformed Church. And so rather than publish parts, we just were like, all right, fine, we'll keep it. You know, because imagine sending missionaries out with like, hey, we have a new Bible. Like, it's hard enough when you're like, hey, we have a Book of Mormon.
Can you find these
Yes.
things that have been
Yes.
removed and read them?
And I'll show you why this is actually critically important. Okay. My wife also says don't do this. It's boring too, but I've got to defy her here a little bit. Okay, this is the book. This is the one that was taken out. One of the books that was taken out. Now, here's what's really interesting about this, and I'll show you why this is important. Let's go to 2nd Esdras chapter 12. Esdras is the Greek rendition of Ezra. So they're the same person. When you read Ezra in the Bible, it's the same person. Okay, there it is. Look at verse 11. Ezra is seeing a vision of an eagle. Ezra is told, the eagle whom thou sawest come up from the sea is the kingdom which was seen in the vision of thy brother Daniel. All right, now, can you think of anywhere else in Scripture where a beast comes up out of the sea except for Daniel and Ezra? Revelation chapter 12 and 13. So if we're seeing something come up out of the sea, it's probably not a good entity. Now, who is this eagle? I'd be a little remiss if I didn't go back to Daniel first. Because to understand how important this eagle is in this prophetic timeline, you have to understand where Daniel will take us to. You all probably know this. This is Daniel chapter 2. Remember how Daniel says that Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. And in the dream he sees a statue. And the statue's head is gold, silver, bronze, iron, miry clay, right? Let's take a look at that. Does anybody remember the number? Remember when Daniel says that the day, from the time of the decree of the king of Babylon, or is it the Assyrian decree? And 2,300 years will pass until the latter-day restoration occurs. You guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, stick with me here. We'll come back to that. Okay. There is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets about what? What shall be in the latter days. There's this big old thing, the big old statue, and Nebuchadnezzar, or Babylon, is the head of gold. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. Okay, just take that right there. In the days of what kings? Let's go back up. Do you see it? You've got a kingdom of gold, a kingdom of silver, brass, iron, and then a kingdom part iron, part clay. What is the kingdom of part iron and part clay? Okay, look at that, 42. So the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. What kingdom?
How about the United States?
I agree, but just take it from right there. Just look at that and make the correlation between exactly what it says first, okay?
Be England.
And then it becomes obvious. The kingdom, would you agree, is the feet.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, or what?
And in particular, it's the toes of the feet that are part iron and part clay. Now, what does Daniel say? Whereas thou sawest the feet, kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of clay, part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Divided. Okay, what from what? It's going to be divided when we get to the feet, and the feet will be part iron and part clay. Okay, how many toes?
10.
How do you know that? It's obvious, right? Everybody answers that. Nobody has ever said 9 or 12. Because it's obvious. Okay, so what's going to happen in the days of the feet and the 10 toes? There will be a kingdom set up that will never be destroyed. Okay, when did that happen?
1830.
1830, okay? Sure. How many kings are there going to be? There's really only probably 2 right answers here. There's either 2 or 10. There's both. What are the 2 kingdoms at the time of 1830 that have just divided from each other?
King of Athens.
Protestants.
It's England and America.
Yeah.
Because where is the kingdom restored at?
America.
In America. All right, now let's jump out here and let's test it. what if our 10 toes, there's 4 of them right there. Okay? Do we see prophetic fulfillment happening starting with that guy?
Yes.
Okay, let's walk through 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There, right here, there's Joseph's birth. There's the first vision. There's the translation of the Book of Mormon. There's the organization of the church. And in the 10th toe, March 11th, 1844, the kingdom of God is organized by Joseph Smith. Exactly, precisely as Daniel says. So, if those are our 10 toes, what does that say when we get to Daniel 7? Another dream, 4 great beasts come up from the sea, a lion, a bear, a leopard, and a 4th beast that Daniel is not given the identity of. Why is Daniel not given the identity? Because Ezra is given the identity. The eagle whom thou sawest is the kingdom seen in the vision of thy brother Daniel. What does that tell us? If the 10 toes are the first 10 presidents, then this eagle is a new form of the other eagle. But this one is wicked. So something must happen between the first 10 toes and the second eagle for God to now treat this eagle as a wicked entity. What happens between the first 10 toes and the second entity? Anything?
Is there a murder?
Many?
Civil War?
Civil war. They killed Joseph. We engage in slavery. You can't do those 2 things and not pay a heavy price with God. You can't enslave an entire race of people and kill a prophet and drive the church out of your country, a country that was built on religious freedom, and then have God be like, that's okay. So what does the Lord do? He breaks the nation and he turns it into something different. And that's the vision Daniel is given, that Ezra is given. So now when we look at Ezra from that perspective, we know our location, we know who the beast is, and now all we have to do is start to figure out, where does Ezra pick up? And how does Ezra teach us about latter-day events here? Okay, so Ezra sees a dream, and he sees, this is fascinating, I can't show it to you today, but this is actually originally written in Latin Vulgate. That's the original version of this. And in the Latin Vulgate, it says that Ezra sees a sea eagle, an aquila. Agua is ocean, water, and aquila is an eagle of the water. So he's being very redundant. I saw an eagle of the water come out of the water. Well, where else would you expect to see that eagle come from? The reason why that's fascinating is what is Ezra seeing? Okay, so I asked Google, what is a sea eagle? And look at what Google said. That's a sea eagle. Okay, what is that? It's a bald eagle. Did you know a bald eagle was a sea eagle? I had no idea. So it gave me kind of a new appreciation for what Ezra was seeing. He's actually seeing our nation's mascot. And this eagle, okay, let's test it, all right? Did America spread her wings over all the earth? Okay, then he says, out of this eagle there were feathers, some contrary, some small. We'll come back to that. But this eagle had 3 heads. You got three branches or three separation of powers.
Yeah.
When you go to Congress and you sit up in the gallery and you look down at the State of Union, how many people sit on that dais?
3.
Okay. Now, this eagle, it says that heads are at rest. And the head in the middle is greater than the others, but all three of the heads were at rest. And the eagle flew with her feathers and rained upon the earth, and all things under heaven were subject to the United States of America. Is that true? No other nation is quite like the United States from about 1920 to I'd say 2020. 2020 is when you finally see America go really lose its political stronghold on the world. Okay, and the feathers are told, watch not all at once, sleep everyone in his own place, and watch by course. What does that mean? Who's going to be running the eagle? Not the heads, they're at rest. It will be the feathers in course.
Some cabal or something.
I numbered the contrary feathers. There were 8. Okay, that's important. We're going to set that aside right now. There's 8 contrary feathers. When you look at an eagle and it has these wings, what are the contrary or oppositional feathers of an eagle? 3 heads. Go
The
ahead.
very tip of their.
Close. These wings perform a very particular function. They cause it to float and to fly. What causes directional change?
Tips.
The tail and the head. But the heads are at rest. So when we think of oppositional feathers to wings, the oppositional feathers of the wings are the steering feathers, the tails, or the tail. Okay, store that in your head. We got to figure out who these feathers are, though. I looked, and behold, on the right side there arose one feather. Where's the first feather come up at? On the right side. That makes that feather a what? What party?
Conservative.
Republican. Okay? So the first one appears to, maybe I'm assuming too much, but if I think about America, and we looked, and I'm in the gallery of Congress, and I'm watching the State of the Union, what's on the right side?
Republicans.
Republicans are. We get that from the French Parliament. And so you'll see the 3 heads sitting on the dais, and you'll see on the right side the Republicans, and on the left side you'll see the Democrats.
Right. Okay.
Now, the first one comes from the right, and when the end of it came, it appeared no more. Is that how we do presidents? You go, you serve, you're done. So the next stood up and reigned and had a great time. And now great means lengthy or large. This is 16th century English, not what we think of today. Then there came a voice that says, you have borne rule over the earth so long, and before you leave, none shall attain unto half your time. There is only one possible person in the entire history of the world that fits that definition.
Roosevelt.
That's preceded by a Republican named Herbert Hoover. Exactly fits. Okay. Now, Michael Rush wrote an entire book on this called A Remnant Shall Return, where he calculated the possibility. He studied Rome, Greece. Nobody fits this. None of them. It's like a 1 in a quadrillion chance that you can get the order that is about to be unfolded here. Okay? So the first one, Hoover. Second one, FDR. Guess how many feathers will follow these 2 guys? 12. Okay, 12 feathers. It says 2 of them are short. Since Herbert Hoover, there have been 7 Republicans and 7 Democrats, with 1 short Nixon, 1 short Democrat, Kennedy, exactly as Ezra predicts. Exactly. Once those 14, now think about what's happening. Who's really in charge of this beast? The 3 heads. Who rises up at the time of Hoover in America in the 1920s? Council on Foreign Relations, Brownlow Commission. It's the rise of modern socialism as we know it today. It all starts in the 20s. From the time of Herbert Hoover and the Council on Foreign Relations, not one single Secretary of State will be selected unless they belong to the CFR. Every single Republican and every single Democrat president will select a Secretary of State from the Council on Foreign Relations since those days. All right, now, once we get through those 7 here, it says, the 12 feathers appeared no more, nor the 2 little feathers. There was no more upon the eagle's body but 3 heads and 6 little wings. These are the 6 oppositional wings, the 6 tail feathers. And I beheld, and lo, the feathers that were under the wing thought to set themselves up. Okay, sorry. I should have finished that. Okay, we go through Hoover to Obama. And according to Ezra, the next president will not really be from the right or left. He will be oppositional and contrary. Who would that be?
Trump.
If he fit that, then you would know this was true, but he doesn't fit that because he was not oppositional
Or
and not contrary. So what happens then is you get these 6, all that's left is the 6 feathers and the 3 heads. But look at what it says in 24. 2 little feathers divided themselves from the 6 and remained under the head on the right side, and only 4 continued. Trump, Biden, and then watch what it says. The 2 that remained thought also to reign. Now, notice how it says thought in themselves to reign. I would say if I put away my partisanship completely, and I look at the 4 remaining feathers, and I look at Trump and Biden, what do they have in common, honestly? What I would say they have in common is they represent 2 factions fighting for the final control of a nation that's about to be destroyed. And so this isn't Republican-Democrat anymore. This is complete and utter, all-out political war. Did you know MIT predicted that America would cease to end by 2040? You guys heard about that study? They predicted, based upon, who knows what, I'm not smart enough to study, that America would be done by 2040. So, once we see these final 2, it says they thought to reign, but when they thought to reign, the heads wake up, turn against the 2, and eat up the 2 feathers. Trump, Biden, 2 left, and it says when they think to reign, these 3 heads wake up and eat them. I don't know how this plays out, but let me just propose something to you.
Did they eat all 4?
They eat the 2 only.
The 2, okay.
What if these 2 never take office? What if they do, right? It could go one of 2 ways. I don't know how to interpret this. But if they don't, we're already on the 3 heads. You know why I'd say we're already on the 3 heads? Because Joe Biden is not running the country.
Right.
He obviously has dementia. I would call what they are doing to him as elder abuse, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not saying the Republicans are any better. They're both horrible. But he is clearly not in control. And when you are not in a capacity to run the country, what happens?
Chaos.
You could be taken out.
You should be taken out based upon medical necessity, but he's not. In the 90s, Dick Cheney did an interview. And in that interview, Dick Cheney said, you can find this online, you can probably even find a video of the interview. He says, we have recognized that America has a problem. All of our chain of power could be wiped out in one day. And because of that, we have what he called a continuity of power issue, or continuity of governance. And so he said in this interview, we have created a backup executive branch not in Washington DC.
Mm.
What is that?
Like a shadow government?
Wait, that's a conspiracy theory. What he's talking about is perfectly legitimate, right? Even though we have no idea where they are or who they are. Well, I look at that and I'm like, well, I heard him say that. Joe Biden has dementia. Who's running the country?
That must be that group.
Well, interestingly, on January 6th, we supposedly had an insurrection. And so on January 12th, the Joint Chiefs of Staff unanimously authored a letter in which the Joint Chiefs stated Donald Trump will leave office and Joe Biden will come in. I don't care what party you're from, that's troubling. Why?
Because it means there's no free election. We don't have elections anymore.
Well, you don't even have to go there. What are the military powers of the United States doing, unilaterally issuing a letter of their own accord saying who they are going to put in as the president? That's not how it works. If anything, that's Congress' job. So I look at that, I look at Dick Cheney's statement, I look at Joe Biden's statement, I look at Mark Milley's letter of January 12th, and I'm like, oh, we have a continuity of government issue here. And if we had a continuity of government issue, would you know? I have no idea, right? I have no idea. So Ezra seems to kind of see this possibility. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm saying that I can look at Ezra and I can go, oh, Ezra seems to be calling out a serious amount of discord in our future. And what he appears to be seeing is the fall of the American nation. And so Ezra will say that the heads will take over. They'll wake up and they will take over the United States. And they will rule with much oppression. Now think of that term oppression. If you had to pick a date in the last 20 years in which America's government began to rule its own people with oppression, what would the year be?
2020.
2020.
And why? Now, they didn't really kill anyone. But what if biblically we're not talking about killing a bunch of people yet? We're talking about founding father level oppression. You lose your fundamental rights. When did we lose our fundamental rights?
2020.
The most important of those being the First Amendment, speech, religion, conscience, petition, and assembly. All of them gone in that year. Again, Ezra seems to predict this after he sees this contrary feather who looks a lot like Donald Trump. Okay, now what year does Donald Trump take office? 2017. What year was that solar eclipse?
2017.
What year did Virgo appear in the sky?
2017.
Okay. Now, that's just coincidence, right? The last time that sign appeared in the sky, the Virgo, how many years was it till Joseph organized the kingdom of God? 1844, 1827. 17 years. Never do math in public. That's the number one rule of math. That's why I don't say it. Because I know it and I'll still forget it. It's 17 years. 2017 plus 17 is?
44.
What an interesting year. 2034. Minus 2000, like Peter says, is 34 AD. You see, we start getting these really strange coincidences in our life. What if I could take you to the Book of Mormon and line the Book of Mormon up with this perfectly? And that would be crazy. What if I could do more than that? Watch this. Some of you have seen this before, some of you have not. And for those of you who haven't, it's really valuable to see, in my opinion. I don't know why, but for some reason, oh man, I'm going to have to come back to that. Okay. In 1958, National Geographic published an article in their magazine called Geographical Twins, A World Apart, okay? 1958. This is the first image they showed in that article. What are you looking at there? Close.
Utah and Jerusalem.
On the left is the Jordan River in Utah. On the right is the Jordan River in Israel. On the right is the Dead Sea. On the left is the Great Salt Lake. They put these maps by each other. Two holy cities, one called Salt Lake, one called, a holy city called Salt Lake, a holy city called Jerusalem, next to a salt sea separated by a 60-mile Jordan River connecting to a fresh body of water. Okay, that's National Geographic in 1958. How do you pronounce Judah in Hebrew? You'd think it would be Yudah, but it's actually Yehudah. Because the J is the Ye, and the Uda is the Uda, Yehudah. Okay, spell Utah phonetically.
U-T-A-A. Oh,
Phonetically.
U-D.
Y, U, T, Y, U. Why Y?
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't say Utah, you say Utah. Pronounce that in Hebrew. Ye, U, Da.
I don't think the Native Americans knew that.
That's right. Now, not only did they not know it, who gave us that name? It was the anti-Mormons who did not like the LDS people, who did not want to name it Utah. We wanted to name it Deseret. And when the Mormons proposed the naming of this state as Deseret, the anti-Mormons in Congress said, no, you will be called Utah after the natives who live there. It's a Apache and a Ute word. And the Ute word is Utah, and the Apache word is Ye-Utah-Hai. And the only reason we know that with certainty the meaning of this name is because both the Apache and the Utes will tell you what that means. It means the people up on high, or the place up on high, in the top of the mountains. Okay, does that sound familiar? In the last days, the mountain of the Lord's house will be established where? In the top of the mountains. That's Isaiah chapter 2. So not only do they give us the name of the ancient kingdom of Judah, they gave us the name prophesied in Isaiah chapter 2. And we matched the place they named us.
This is in, you said National Geographic?
Isn't that? No, what I'm telling you now is not in National Geographic, just this is. Okay, but I'm going to show you stuff now that's not there, like this. The ancient kingdom of...
The map was in National Geographic?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, let me show you this first. So, there's a guy named Rehoboam, and Rehoboam is the son of Solomon. Okay, so you get these three kings, Saul, David, Solomon. Solomon gets really wicked, has a son named Rehoboam. Rehoboam means the builder of nations or the builder of monuments. And Rehoboam has gone bad. So there's another guy named Jeroboam. Now, Jeroboam means he pleads the cause of the people. Okay, so think about those two names. Very similar, Rehoboam, Jeroboam. Jeroboam pleads the cause of the people. Rehoboam is a nation builder, king builder, monument builder. Which one do you want to be your king? Okay, Jeroboam is the son of a widow. He'll serve 22 years in office. And it says in the, oh God, what does it say? It says, I think he sets his hand against a king. Okay. Now, guess what his profession is? He's a civil engineer. Now, just let all that settle in and tell me who that is. Types and shadows. Think of a president who's the son of a widow, civil engineer, executive power for 22 years, sets his hand against a king, and pleads the cause of the people? George Washington. Okay, so when we think of these two kingdoms, we get this modern manifestation of the northern kingdom of Israel here that separates, or that is separated from the holy capital, the southern kingdom of Judah, under two tribes, Judah and Benjamin. The 10 tribes will migrate to the north, will be scattered out all over the world. So I'm not going to go into the northern kingdom today, but I can actually compare all the kings of the northern kingdom of Israel with presidents of the United States, and they line up with the Ezra's eagle, and they come to alignment in 2017. And in the northern kingdom of Israel, the guy who comes along that brings down the house of Ahab is a guy named Jehu. And Jehu is this crazy dude from the desert who, it says in the Bible, everybody knew him because he drove his chariot furiously. Okay, so his name's Jehu. Prior to Jehu was a guy named Jehoram. Prior to him was a guy named Ahaziah, and then Ahab. Okay? Jehu in the Bible was called upon by God to bring down one of these houses. Guess which one? Chronologically, you'd think that guy, right? No. He was called to bring down Ahab. But Jehu didn't fight Ahab because Ahab was dead. And so Jehu fought Ahab's wife, and her name was Jezebel. And Jezebel used to live in the capital city, but she moved out of the capital city to reign from another place where she dedicated herself to child sacrifice. Now, interestingly, her husband, Ahab, stole a bunch of land that God gave to a man named Naboth. Now, remember my internship? Who was it with? Clinton stole land from who? Utah. Clinton married Jezebel, Hillary Clinton, followed by George W. Bush, followed by Barack Obama, followed by Donald Trump, Jehu, who fought who? Not Bush, or not Obama, not Bush. He fought Jezebel, Hillary, who moved from where to where? From Washington, D.C.
To New
York, and ran for office, the capital of the city dedicated to the aborting of babies, like no other state in the nation. That's just a coincidence, all right? So, we won't go into that tonight. We're going to stick with the southern kingdom of Judah. And interestingly, the southern kingdom of Judah had 20 kings. And Utah's governors so far match exactly with those kings, except we're on our 18th governor. And the 18th governor of the southern kingdom of Judah was a guy named Jehoiakim. Now, what's interesting about Jehoiakim is, you all know Zedekiah. Zedekiah is the king who leaves Jerusalem? Lehi. What happens to Judah and Zedekiah under the reign of Zedekiah? It's destroyed. Okay, but the destruction of Judah, or the southern kingdom of Judah, which in the Book of Mormon is called the land of the Jews, or Judea, the destruction is really laid at the time of Josiah, but most fully under Jehoiakim's reign. And it says in Isaiah, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, Babylon came and took control of Judah. In the 3rd year of this guy's reign, guess what Utah did?
It's martial law thing.
No, it would be, I think it's 2022. We adopted a new flag. Now, most people would be like, oh, okay, come on, that doesn't mean anything. But hold on. When you're conquered, what do?
Change
You raise the new flag. All right, now who conquered Jehoiakim's day? It was Babylon. Okay, here's Jehoiakim, he's number 18. And Babylon doesn't take over. They simply exert control, right? They don't come in, they don't bring all their people. They come in and they say, hey, you're ours now. And they turn Jehoiakim into the leader of his own. They're like, you can stay. Everybody can stay, but you are our vassal state now. That's what Babylon does. Babylon doesn't actually invade and kill people until Zedekiah. So under Jehoiakim, all they do is come in, they say, we're in charge now. You're Babylon's. And Jehoiakim becomes a vassal of Babylon. What's the symbol of Babylon? What's the motto of Babylon?
Pride, Babylon.
Pride, right? It's pride. Well, fortunately, Utah would never adopt that motto. Why?
It's too blatant.
It's already been taken by others.
Yeah, and plus, Ezra Taft Benson got up and said,
Beware of pride.
beware of pride. So we would never do that. Like, there's no way. Oh, come on. Oh, we did. Right? I mean, this is how they describe the meaning of the new flag. It's crazy. It's like absolutely nuts. And yet we did it. And then when you look at the flag, okay, look at that old flag. Notice anything about that?
The eagle.
The eagle.
Who's that? That's Ezra's eagle. The old flag was symbolic. It's amazing. When you really study it, it's the whole thing is so symbolic. You even look at when we adopted it. Let's see if I can find the new flag. Okay, look at that thing. They originally wanted to put, I am not joking, they wanted to put the Star of Ishtar right there, originally. And the legislators wouldn't do it. So they pulled out the Star of Ishtar and put in a regular star and encased the beehive in what? Okay, now this is a little creepy. It's a hexagon, which is a cube, turned on its corner, which is the symbol of Saturn, or Saturnalia. There's a whole book. Look into that. I'm not going to take you into that, but look into that. It's crazy. Encompassed by a gold band. Okay, what? Just start to think through the symbolism. And I'm not saying to you that Utah's like filled with Satanists. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying it would be foolish to not observe the biblical and symbolic parallels in our day and the Ancient of Days. Does that make sense? So if we are mirroring this ancient kingdom in so many different ways, would it be so hard to believe that we will mirror it in our conclusion? Okay, and if we mirror it in our conclusion, what happens to Utah under the reign of Zedekiah? It's invaded and destroyed. Now, most people would say there's no way that would happen. Sorry, you Mormons are not that important. Except we are. You know why? Let me show you something. What age do you live in?
Information age.
Okay, information age. Anybody disagree? What is the new king of information? AI. Okay, where is the storehouse of all modern intelligence?
The NSA.
It's actually it's the NSA. Where I don't even know what they call it. It's the NSA database. Okay, in 2016, I'm in the Bundy case in Oregon. Anybody know what discovery is? Discovery is when the government or the other side of your case brings forward like this huge amount of information and dumps it on you and says, here's the information we're obligated to give you. We call that discovery. Inside that discovery, we found that the government in 2014 to 16 was operating an AI. And we read that in 2016 and we're like, what do we do with this? We